You're watching Nature Spirit Academy. We practice wholesome traditions in order to navigate and restore our connection with Earth Mother. Today, I want to talk about Thanksgiving. Before I do that, I want to thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel. Find me on TikTok and Facebook, Nature Spirit Academy. So, Thanksgiving. How do you feel about Thanksgiving? Not the food, not coming together with families, but I'm assuming a lot of the people who watch my videos, you're a little older. You've heard different sides of history about Thanksgiving. How do you really feel? I decided to go ahead and do something quick on Thanksgiving. I'm gonna do part one today, and then I'm gonna do part two. In part one, I'm gonna go over a little bit of history, what we learned in school, a little bit of the dark side of what the other side of Thanksgiving look like. And then part two, I will go into more details, just a darker, more heinous Thanksgiving that was just removed from history. As someone who honors Earth Mother, nature, indigenous people, and natives and different people, different things like that, I do have to put into consideration that what I learned is actually a little bit different than what actually take place, because the people who were a victim to the history around Thanksgiving, they're still here, they're still alive, and they have their own story. I'm not here to speak for them, but I am here as just an ally to kind of bring forth some light to the holiday. All right. Before I start, I also want to say I'm not here to tell anyone to celebrate or not to celebrate, whether or not you should eat. I'm just going to go over what I've learned, my own experience, and then we'll go from there. Tell me how you feel about it. Tell me where you live in the world. How do you guys celebrate? Okay. As someone who is spiritual, who loves nature, I do understand there are seasonal celebration, and my conclusion before I even start this video is to let you know that I do believe people celebrated not Thanksgiving, but a holiday that resonated with the season of the earth, just like Christmas, just like Halloween, just like Easter. Every season there's a different holiday, and there's different energies in this world that we decided to honor as people. Over time, those holidays were changed. They're mixed in with other holidays, and now it's current and it's secular. We call it something else. So, Thanksgiving is a national holiday celebrated in the United States, Canada, Grenada, St. Lucia, Liberia, and unofficially in countries like Brazil and the Philippines. It's also observed in the Dutch town of Leiden and Australian territory of Norfolk Island. It began as a day of giving thanks for the blessings of the harvest of the preceding year. Thanksgiving is celebrated the second Monday in October in Canada and the fourth Thursday of November in the United States, and around the same part of the year in other places. Like I said before, it was called Thanksgiving. I'm not saying there was never a Thanksgiving. Just keep in mind, before all these holidays were created, before men decided to create all these holidays, whether it was for celebration or their own gains, we did celebrate the seasons. Although Thanksgiving has historic roots and religious and cultural traditions, it has long been celebrated as a secular holiday as well. Okay? So, Thanksgiving, I think a lot of people forget, like when we attend school here in the US, I'm in the US, we learn all these different things about what Thanksgiving is. But we also have to remember those people who wrote that story. They have their own reasons for to write that story. There's another group of people who have a different story to Thanksgiving, and we just have to consider that. The holiday wasn't made official until 1863, when President Abraham Lincoln declared it as a kind of thank you for the Civil War victories in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Beyond that, claiming it as first Thanksgiving isn't quite right, because either as both the native and the European societies, they've been holding festivals to celebrate successful harvests for centuries. Like I said, people all around the world always celebrated this time of the year, whether it's for harvest, whether it's for spiritual practices, whether it's for like the new moon and different things that's happening in the solar system, also on the earth. So basically, people all over the world celebrate it during this time of the year, and in many spiritual cultures, and still today, there are many ceremonies and celebrations to honor the season. Depending where you are in the world, the end of the year is celebrated in many spiritual systems. They have their own names for the celebration, and they do their own traditions. So in parts of the world where people are not celebrating Thanksgiving, they may be celebrating something else, something more spiritual. They have a different name for it, and they call it something different. As for example, my family, my family gets together on Thanksgiving and they eat, but we don't celebrate it as like the pilgrims did. We don't celebrate it as like the American way, like what it means to them. It means different things for different people. We literally, and we don't even have the same food. We don't make like beans, greens, all that. We don't do that. We cook, we have turkey, and we make just regular Haitian food. And we all come together and eat because that's the day just about everyone's off work, everybody's off. Most people are off on that day or at least half of the day, and we just come together and just eat. It's not even, we don't even talk and we don't do all that. We just come together and eat because everybody's off and the kids, they see their cousin. So we don't hold it to that American culture that a lot of people do it for. And also, as somebody who's spiritual, who practices spirituality that connects with Earth, I celebrate it different on more on a spiritual level. I don't want to get into that right now because it's, I want to just keep it about Thanksgiving. But in my spiritual practices, we have a different name for this season. It's kind of still the Halloween season in my spiritual practice, but by the end of November, the beginning of December, we do have another celebration that we do celebrate. So the story of the first Thanksgiving, most Americans have been taught in school, like me and you, where the pilgrims and the natives gathered together, that famous feast. It's actually, from my research and a lot of your research, it's not accurate. It didn't happen the way we were taught in school. So we're going to blame a lot of the school textbooks. They kind of gloss over a lot of things that actually took place, and they told the stories to children. I remember being in school where we had a song for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving Day, I'm thankful, giving every day. We had a whole song for Thanksgiving Day. And although my family didn't celebrate Thanksgiving Day, but I still remember in school, people wore pilgrims and natives outfits, and they had a whole celebration for Thanksgiving. The story I was told, a lot of you were told, was that the pilgrims and the Native Americans, they got together and I guess they had a big feast to celebrate the harvest. I don't really remember. As children, things are told to us. We don't really think about it because it involves food and families and just gathering. It's just a celebration of, like, I guess, of life. People come together, we eat together. As a child, you're not thinking about the gruesomes and the other stuff that happens. But as you become an adult, you're supposed to be able to think for yourself and see things for what they are and go deeper into what you were taught. Like what you were taught when you were 9 years old, when you're in your 30s. No, let me go back. When you're in your teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you're supposed to go deeper and do research on what you were taught and just get more information. Because obviously, it's hard to tell 10-year-old children what actually happened in history and give them the full details. It might be a bit, traumatic to tell these little kids everything that took place. But as we become adults, we're supposed to educate ourselves and just learn more. So a lot of the high school textbooks, they kind of like teach the history where we just memorize it. Like I said, I kind of memorize the song and remember what we did, but the details, that's kind of unclear. So another thing we learned in school was that the pilgrims and the natives got together and eat. And then I learned also, as I become an adult, the pilgrims never call themselves pilgrims. They call themselves like separatists or saints. But the truth from my research, and if you do your research, you'll find out that there's no evidence the natives were even invited to a Thanksgiving dinner. And a lot of the misconception is that the pilgrims extended invitation to the native. So let me clarify that. There's no evidence that the natives were invited. But in school, we learned that the pilgrims like invited the natives, but there's absolutely like no real history in the native oral documentation, as written documentations that they were actually invited to a feast with the pilgrims. So the English written records does not mention invitation, and the native oral tradition does not mention any event as well. So if it happened the way that it happened, how come the natives don't have a history of this big harvest and they'll got together with the pilgrims and they danced and they ate together? But we know who wrote the books that we read in school. Let's just be real. And we also have no evidence there was turkey served. There was no mention of turkey, um, no pies, anything like that. So we have to understand um, that something did happen. There's a history around this time of the year that something took place. And as a person who went to American schools, I understand that there's books that was written, and whoever wrote the book obviously was not a native person to wrote their side of the story to what happened. So we're sitting here, we're celebrating Thanksgiving. For the longest time, I thought it was a day of celebration to celebrate two groups of people coming together because they did so well. And then as I become an adult, I realized, oh, that's not actually what took place. Something totally different took place than what I've been taught. Now, I'm not saying that something good didn't happen, but I understand that different people experience different things around that time, and it wasn't good for everybody. And to pretend that it's good for everybody and to sit there and celebrate as it was good for everybody, it to me is just very hypocritical. And I don't sit here and try to pretend everything was good. And what I read in school books is actually fact, because what I've learned as an adult is it was all lies. But what I can say is around this time of the year, everywhere in the world, different ceremonies, different things are being celebrated. Maybe the natives have had their own celebration, the pilgrims had a different celebration for something different. But since both people were celebrating at the same time, they kind of like whoever wrote the books kind of just like threw everything together and just made it one. But it's important to not erase people's cultures, to not erase people's histories, and to not erase people's sufferings. It's very, very important. I can celebrate my holiday without forcing it on somebody else. They can celebrate their holidays and they can't force it on me. After Christmas, Thanksgiving is basically the second like favorite holidays for Americans. But with Native Americans and Alaska natives, the relationship with the day is totally different. It's very complicated. They don't celebrate it the way we celebrate it because to them, that time of the year, it's an ugly chapter in their history. It's a symbol of empty promises where things were created. A lot of things were glossed over. to just the desire of of their colonization. So it's basically something happened in history. The one person said this is what happened. They kind of sugarcoat it, glossed over it, wrote it in history books, and kind of like indoctrinate people to celebrate it for that. But for a lot of people in that time, that's not what it was. So whether you are a native, you're indigenous, you're a foreigner to the USA, you do participate in the celebration one way or another. To me, if there's a group that was exploited, harmed, or their demise was what was being celebrated, okay, I do not want to participate in that at all. So what's your knowledge of Thanksgiving? What have you been told? I've learned that a lot of people were massacred. Um, People's cultures were um, being exploited. Their was being just destroyed. They're being erased. They're being enslaved. They're being human trafficked through different parts of the country, being sent all overseas. There was a lot of horrible things that happened. And then when that day came, there was a celebration. The people who orchestrated these horrible things came together and they had a celebration. Not to say the other people didn't have their own celebration, but the people that claim Thanksgiving, this is what Thanksgiving is, they're not the people who suffered. They're actually the people who were orchestrating a lot of horrible things. Okay, so like I said, I'm not here to tell anyone what to celebrate, okay, how to celebrate it, or anything like that. But to me, if people were harmed, I don't want to celebrate anyone's genocide because what goes around comes around. When you're okay knowing that people were hurt, people were killed, children were enslaved, and you okay with celebrating, that comes back around. My whole life, my whole spiritual system is about not harming and not causing pain and suffering to others. Okay, so I have some more notes here. I do encourage you to do your own research, talk to your elders, and connect with something good that's worth celebrating. Okay, like new seasons, um, new spirits, new energies on the earth is a reason to celebrate. Indigenous people and those who honor Earth Mother would be celebrating a harvest, a new moon. They would be giving thanks to a new season to come. Around this time of the year, a lot of things are dying, but it's beautiful, and it's a lot of animals and a lot of life is going into hibernation. So giving thanks to what sustain us and giving thanks to what's coming is good. I can see indigenous people celebrating around this time of the year. I can see natives celebrating around this time of the year. I can see foreigners celebrating around this time of the year. Everyone can celebrate around this time of the year. There's a lot to celebrate and participate in. So, nature is my spiritual system. So, I give thanks to the spirit that will be guiding me. I do celebrate, and I want you to celebrate, but I want you to celebrate something that is worthy. I want you to try to celebrate something that's going to bring life to you. I want you to celebrate something that's going to bring good energy to you. I want you to celebrate something that's going to bring good karma to you. How do you feel about the fact that natives and indigenous people were massacred and that is being connected to Thanksgiving? How do you feel about that? If you did your own research and you find out, ooh, it's not necessarily what I learned in school. There was a lot going on in that time, and the people who were being, I guess, exploited, abused, enslaved, they didn't write the book I read in school. So, how do you feel about that? There's been proof that they were massacred, and a lot of things taking place, happening to natives and indigenous people. And then after that, there was a big celebration that's called Thanksgiving, and it was the other group of people who were causing all this pain who created that holiday. I'm not trying to be political. I'm not trying to tell you not to go eat with your family and drink and whatever. But is there a way you can celebrate and celebrate it for something good? And is there a way you can still give honor and try to respect the people who don't see it that way, the people who don't want to celebrate because of what their ancestors went through? Thank you so much for watching. This is part one. And part two, I'm going to go a little deeper into it, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up to what part two is going to look like. I'm going to go deeper into the history and some things that were hidden and the different lies we were taught as children. And what do you do now as an adult? And how do you teach your children to celebrate, but celebrate it in a way where we're not celebrating someone else's genocide? Thank you for watching Nature Spirit Academy. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on TikTok. Please subscribe, like. I have more to come. And tell me how you feel about this topic. And if you have something to be thankful for, let me know in the comment section. Thank you. Enjoy. Have a good day.